At 0647 on June 6, 1944, Commander Samuel Dealey stood in the cramped conning tower of USS Harder, watching three Japanese destroyers cut through the moonlit waters off Tawi-Tawi, tracking his submarine with deadly precision. 37 years old, 5 war patrols, 18 enemy ships destroyed. The Imperial Japanese Navy had dispatched Minazuki, Hayanami, and Tanikaze with orders to eliminate the American submarine that had been terrorizing their supply lines for 3 weeks. Until April 1944, American submarines avoided Japanese destroyers. A destroyer moved at 35 knots. A submerged submarine struggled to reach 9. Between December 1941 and March 1944, Japanese destroyers had sunk 14 American submarines. 0 American submarines had sunk a Japanese destroyer while both vessels actively engaged in combat. Commander Dealey changed that equation on April 13th. When destroyer Ikazuchi charged Harder's position at flank speed, every officer on the bridge expected Dealey to dive deep and run. Instead, he ordered flank speed ahead, straight at the destroyer. At 900 yards, Harder fired 4 torpedoes in a spread pattern. 2 torpedoes struck amidships. The destroyer exploded and sank in 5 minutes. Dealey's radio report became famous throughout the Pacific Submarine Force. Expended 4 torpedoes and 1 Jap destroyer. Admiral Soimu Toyota, commander-in-chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet, didn't find it amusing. Between January and May 1944, Japan had lost 23 destroyers. Operation Ago, the plan to destroy the American invasion fleet at the Philippines, required precise coordination. Losing destroyers to submarine attacks disrupted everything. By late May, Toyota had concentrated the mobile fleet at Tawi-Tawi anchorage. 4 battleships including Yamato, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 28 destroyers. The largest concentration of Japanese naval power since Midway. American codebreakers knew they were coming. Admiral Charles Lockwood sent Harder to patrol the waters around Tawi-Tawi and attack targets of opportunity. For 9 days, Harder operated undetected. Then, on June 6th at 0300, a Japanese patrol plane spotted Harder's periscope wake 15 miles north of Tawi-Tawi. 3 destroyers responded immediately. If you want to see how Dealey's aggressive tactics turned out against 3 destroyers hunting him simultaneously, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories about the submarines that changed naval warfare. Please subscribe. Back to Dealey. Commander Dealey studied the lead destroyer through his periscope. Minazuki, 1,250 tons, 4 5-inch guns. She was closing fast, zigzagging to avoid torpedo attacks. Behind her, 2 more destroyers spread out in a search pattern, boxing Harder into a kill zone. Dealey swung Harder's bow directly at Minazuki. Range, 1,100 yards. Time to collision, 96 seconds. Every man in Harder's conning tower knew what down the throat meant. You fire torpedoes straight at an attacking destroyer's bow, then dive beneath her keel. If your torpedoes miss, the destroyer drops depth charges directly on your position. If you dive too late, the destroyer rams you. At 750 yards, Dealey fired 3 torpedoes. Take her down, 300 feet. Harder's bow dropped at a 30-degree angle. 40 seconds after firing, 2 explosions shook Harder so violently that light fixtures shattered. Then a 3rd explosion lifted Harder's stern 6 feet before slamming back down. Dealey climbed to periscope depth. Where Minazuki had been, he saw debris and an oil slick. The destroyer had broken in half and was sinking. The other 2 destroyers were racing away, dropping depth charges at random. Admiral Toyota received the news at 0900. He ordered 6 more destroyers to find the submarine. By noon, Japanese patrol planes were searching every 20 minutes. But Dealey wasn't finished hunting. June 7th, 0230. Harder surfaced to recharge batteries. The night was pitch black. No moon, heavy cloud cover. Perfect conditions. At 0312, radar contact. Single ship, bearing 095, range 8,000 yards, closing fast. The contact was moving at 28 knots. Definitely a destroyer. Destroyer Hayanami, 1,700 tons, had been searching for American submarines since 0100. Her captain, Commander Hideo Kuboki, had received orders to return to base at 0300. He was exhausted. Nobody expected an American submarine to attack on the surface at night. Dealey ordered flank speed. Harder's diesel engines pushed the submarine to 21 knots. He was closing the range deliberately. Get inside the destroyer's radar detection range before they spotted you. At 4,000 yards, Hayanami's radar operator picked up a surface contact. Small, moving fast. Probably another destroyer returning to base. At 3,000 yards, Kuboki realized his mistake. American submarine. He ordered flank speed and turned to ram. Too late. At 2,300 yards, Dealey fired 4 torpedoes. 2 struck Hayanami's starboard side near the aft magazine. The explosion tore the destroyer's stern completely off. The ship rolled 90 degrees, her propellers still spinning as she went under stern first. Kuboki and 147 sailors died. Dealey submerged immediately. Japanese patrol planes would arrive within minutes. 2 destroyers in 24 hours. The Imperial Japanese Navy was hunting him with everything they had. Admiral Toyota was furious. 2 destroyers lost in 2 days to the same submarine. He pulled 8 destroyers from convoy escort duty and organized them into hunter-killer groups. Their only mission? Find and destroy the American submarine operating near Tawi-Tawi. Every destroyer captain received the same orders. Maximum aggression, no retreat, kill that submarine. On June 8th, Dealey took harder south towards Sabutu Passage, the narrow strait between Tawi-Tawi and Borneo. Japanese destroyers patrolled that passage constantly. Dealey wanted to see how many he could sink before they figured out his tactics. At 1400 hours, lookouts spotted 2 destroyers steaming in formation, Tanikaze and an unidentified escort. Both were moving at 25 knots, conducting a standard search pattern. Dealey studied their movements for 90 minutes. The destroyers were following a predictable zigzag pattern, changing course every 8 minutes. That gave him maybe 30 seconds to set up a shot after each turn. He positioned Harder directly in their path and waited. At 1630, Tanikaze turned toward Harder's position. Range, 3,000 yards. Dealey let her close. 2,500 yards, 2,000, 1,500. At 1,200 yards, he fired 4 torpedoes at 17-second intervals. The first torpedo missed. The second struck Tanikaze near the bridge. The third hit the forward magazine. The explosion was so massive that Harder's crew heard it clearly underwater, even with the hatches sealed. Tanikaze's bow section separated from the main hull. Both pieces sank within 3 minutes. The escort destroyer immediately turned and charged Harder's position, dropping depth charges as she came. Dealey took Harder deep. 400 feet. The depth charges exploded overhead, shaking the submarine violently but causing no serious damage. After 40 minutes, the destroyer gave up and withdrew. 3 destroyers in 3 days. Admiral Toyota was about to make a decision that would change the entire course of the Battle of the Philippine Sea. But first, Dealey had 1 more destroyer to sink. And this time, he was going to do it in broad daylight, with 2 Japanese destroyers watching. June 9th, 0500. Dealey took Harder to periscope depth, 12 miles southwest of Tawi-Tawi. What he saw made every man in the conning tower hold their breath. Dead ahead, 4 Japanese destroyers steaming in line abreast formation, actively searching for submarines. Their sonar was pinging so loud, Harder's sound operator could hear it without headphones. Dealey had 8 torpedoes remaining. 4 destroyers meant he'd get maybe 2 shots before they overwhelmed him. He studied their formation through the periscope. The lead destroyer was zigzagging aggressively. The second was maintaining a steady course. That was his target. At 0612, the second destroyer turned directly toward Harder's position. Range, 4,000 yards. Dealey waited. 3,000. 2,500. At 1,800 yards, He fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 struck the destroyer's port side within 5 seconds of each other. The ship exploded so violently that debris flew 300 feet into the air. She rolled over and sank in 90 seconds. The other 3 destroyers immediately converged on Harder's position. Dealey took her deep, 500 feet. Depth charges began exploding overhead. 23 in the first 10 minutes. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in. Hull plates groaned under the pressure. A pipe burst in the forward torpedo room, spraying seawater across the deck. Harder's crew worked in silence, repairing damage while depth charges continued to detonate around them. After 2 hours, the destroyers withdrew. Dealey climbed to periscope depth. The destroyers were gone. 4 enemy warships sunk in 4 days. But Dealey wasn't thinking about his success. He was thinking about his fuel. Harder had burned through 60% of her diesel reserves. She had maybe 3 more days before she'd have to withdraw to Fremantle. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commander of the Japanese mobile fleet at Tawi-Tawi, received reports of the attacks at 1400 hours on June 9th. 4 destroyers lost, 1 submarine. Ozawa did the math. If an American submarine could penetrate his defensive screen this easily, the entire anchorage was vulnerable. He sent an urgent message to Admiral Toyota. The mobile fleet needed to depart Tawi-Tawi immediately. The Americans knew where they were. Toyota agreed. Operation Ago required the mobile fleet to intercept the American invasion force near the Marianas, but the operation wasn't scheduled to begin until June 15th. Moving 6 days early meant his carriers would arrive without proper reconnaissance. His destroyers would be scattered across multiple patrol zones. His supply lines wouldn't be established. But staying at Tawi-Tawi with an American submarine hunting his destroyers was suicide. On June 10th at 0800, the Japanese mobile fleet departed Tawi-Tawi. 4 battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers, 24 destroyers, heading northeast toward the Philippine Sea. American codebreakers intercepted the movement orders within hours. Admiral Raymond Spruance, commander of the 5th Fleet, adjusted his battle plans accordingly. The early departure gave American carriers an extra day to position themselves for what would become the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Dealey knew none of this. On June 10th at 1630, he spotted 2 more destroyers patrolling north of Sibutu Passage. Both were moving at high speed, conducting an aggressive search pattern. Dealey had 5 torpedoes remaining, enough for 1 more attack. At 17:15, he fired 3 torpedoes at the lead destroyer. 1 struck near the bow. The destroyer slowed but didn't sink. The second destroyer immediately charged Harder's position. Dealey fired his last 2 torpedoes. Both missed. He had no torpedoes left, no way to defend himself, and a Japanese destroyer bearing down on his position at 32 knots. Dealey ordered emergency deep. Harder's diving planes bit hard, pushing the submarine down at maximum angle. 300 feet, 400, 500. The destroyer passed directly overhead, her propellers churning the water so loudly that Harder's crew could hear the blades through the hull. Then silence. The destroyer was circling back. Dealey knew the pattern. The destroyer would make multiple passes, dropping depth charges on each run until either the submarine surfaced or imploded. Harder had no torpedoes to fight back, no way to damage the destroyer. His only option was to outlast the attack and hope the destroyer ran out of depth charges first. The first pattern dropped at 17:23. 6 depth charges exploded in a tight pattern around Harder. The submarine rolled 15 degrees to starboard. Light bulbs shattered. Men grabbed handholds. A second pattern dropped 2 minutes later, closer this time. The explosions lifted Harder's stern and slammed it back down. Cork insulation rained from the overhead. A hydraulic line burst in the control room. For 90 minutes, the destroyer hunted Harder. 42 depth charges. Most exploded too shallow or too far away, but 3 came close enough to crack gauge glass and spring minor leaks. Dealey kept Harder at 500 feet, moving at 2 knots, making as little noise as possible. Finally, at 1900 hours, the destroyer withdrew. She'd exhausted her depth charge supply. Dealey waited another hour before surfacing. The ocean was empty. No destroyers.
No patrol planes. Just darkness and the sound of diesel engines recharging batteries. Harder limped south toward Fremantle at 8 knots, preserving fuel. She arrived on June 26th after a 17-day patrol. The moment Harder tied up at the pier, Admiral Charles Lockwood was waiting. He'd been tracking Dealey's patrol reports via radio intercepts. 5 destroyers attacked, 4 confirmed sunk, 1 damaged. In 12 days, the most successful anti-destroyer patrol in submarine warfare history. Lockwood awarded Dealey a 4th Navy Cross on the spot. Then he asked the question every submarine commander dreaded. Can you do it again? Dealey's answer was immediate. Give me torpedoes and I'll sink 10. Harder's crew spent July in Fremantle undergoing repairs and resupply. Dealey trained new crew members on down-the-throat attack tactics. By late July, every submarine commander in the Pacific had studied Harder's patrol reports. The tactic worked. Between June and August 1944, American submarines sank 14 Japanese destroyers using variations of Dealey's aggressive approach. On August 5th, Harder departed Fremantle for her 6th war patrol. She'd been assigned to operate as part of a 3-submarine wolf pack with USS Haddo and USS Hake. Commander Dealey was in charge. Their mission? Patrol the waters west of Luzon and attack Japanese shipping heading to the Philippines. The patrol started well. On August 21st, the Wolfpack intercepted a 16-ship convoy off Palawan Bay. In a coordinated attack, they sank 4 cargo ships totaling 22,000 tons. On August 22nd, Harder and Haddo attacked 3 coastal defense vessels off Bataan. All 3 sank. Harder was credited with destroying 2 frigates, Matsuwa and Hiburi. By August 23rd, Haddo had expended all her torpedoes and withdrew from the patrol. That left Harder and Hake operating together off Dassault Bay on the western coast of Luzon. Japanese intelligence had tracked the Wolfpack's movements. They knew approximately where the American submarines were operating, and they'd sent something special to deal with them. At 04:53 on August 24th, USS Hake submerged 4 miles off Hermana Mayer Island. Through her periscope, she could see Harder on the surface, 4,500 yards to the south. Both submarines were preparing to attack a damaged Japanese destroyer that Haddo had torpedoed the previous day. Then, Hake's sonar operator heard something that made his blood run cold. Echo ranging. Close. Getting closer. 2 Japanese escort ships were closing on Harder's position. CD-22 and minesweeper PB-102. Both were moving at 18 knots, conducting an active sonar search. They'd been hunting American submarines for 3 days. Japanese intelligence had intercepted radio transmissions between Harder, Hake, and Haddo during the Palawan Bay attack. They knew the Wolfpack was operating somewhere off Dassault Bay. Hake's captain immediately ordered his submarine deep and silent. He watched through his periscope as the 2 Japanese ships closed on Harder. At 05:20, Hake's radio operator tried to warn Harder. No response. Either Harder's radio was off or she was already preparing to dive. At 05:30, Harder crash dived. The Japanese ships were less than 2,000 yards away. Dealey had seen them at the last possible moment. He took Harder down fast, ordering flank speed and maximum dive angle. The submarine descended at 35 degrees, her diesel engine still running as she submerged, leaving a massive bubble trail on the surface that pinpointed her exact location. CD-22 sonar operator had a perfect contact. Range, 1,200 yards. Depth, approximately 200 feet. Still diving. The escort ship's captain ordered an immediate depth charge attack. At 05:47, CD-22 made her first pass over Harder's position and dropped a full pattern of depth charges set to detonate at 250 feet. The explosions bracketed Harder perfectly. At least 3 detonated within 50 feet of her hull. The submarine's pressure hull cracked near the after torpedo room. Seawater flooded in at tremendous pressure. Harder's stern flooded completely within 90 seconds. The submarine's bow rose sharply as the stern dragged her down. Dealey ordered all ballast blown. Emergency surface. The compressed air system fought against the flooding, but there was too much water in the stern compartments. Harder couldn't reach the surface. At 05:52, CD-22 made a second depth charge run. This pattern hit even closer. The explosions ruptured Harder's main pressure hull in multiple locations. The control room flooded.
All electrical power failed. Emergency lighting went dark. At 600 feet, well below her maximum operating depth, Harder's hull began to implode. Bulkheads collapsed under pressure. Compartments crushed like tin cans. The submarine was gone in less than 3 minutes from the first depth charge impact. At 0600, CD-22 and PB-102 reported a successful kill. Large quantities of oil, wood debris, and cork floated to the surface. The Japanese ships circled the area for 2 hours, dropping additional depth charges to ensure the submarine was destroyed. They recovered no survivors. All 79 men aboard Harder died. Commander Samuel Dealey, radioman Calvin Bull, who'd earned a Bronze Star for the destroyer kills in June. Every officer and sailor who'd helped make Harder the most feared submarine in the Pacific. USS Hake remained submerged until nightfall. Her captain filed a contact report describing Harder's loss. The message reached Admiral Lockwood at 0800 on August 25th. Lockwood immediately suspended all submarine operations in the Dassel Bay area and ordered every boat to withdraw to safer waters. The news reached the United States in early September. The Navy Department announced that USS Harder was presumed lost with all hands. No additional details were provided. Submarine operations were classified. The American public wouldn't learn the full story of Harder's 5th Patrol until after the war ended. But the Japanese knew. Admiral Toyota received the report on August 26th. The submarine that had terrorized his destroyer fleet for 3 months was finally gone. He ordered a commendation for CD-22's crew. What Toyota didn't know was how much damage Dealey had already done, and how his 4 days in June had changed everything.
The Battle of the Philippine Sea began on June 19, 1944, 9 days after Harder sank her 4th destroyer off Tawi-Tawi. Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet engaged Admiral Spruance's 5th Fleet in what would become the largest carrier battle in history. 15 American carriers faced 9 Japanese carriers. 900 American aircraft against 430 Japanese aircraft. The battle lasted 2 days. American pilots shot down 376 Japanese aircraft, while losing only 30 of their own. American pilots called it the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. 3 Japanese carriers sank: Taiho, Shokaku, Hio. 2 battleships damaged. 1 cruiser sunk. The Imperial Japanese Navy lost 75% of its carrier air groups and would never recover. But the battle might have gone differently if Admiral Ozawa had arrived on schedule. His original plan called for the mobile fleet to depart Tawi-Tawi on June 15th. That would have given his reconnaissance planes 4 days to locate the American fleet before the battle began. His carriers would have been fully supplied, his destroyer screens properly organized, his battle plan coordinated with land-based aircraft from the Philippines. Instead, Harder forced him to leave 6 days early. Ozawa arrived in the Philippine Sea on June 14th with his fleet scattered across 200 miles of ocean. His reconnaissance aircraft had burned through their fuel reserves during the early departure and couldn't conduct proper searches. His destroyers were still regrouping from anti-submarine patrols around Tawi-Tawi, and his supply ships were 3 days behind schedule. When American carrier aircraft found Ozawa's fleet on June 19th, his carriers were still launching aircraft. His combat air patrol was undermanned. His fleet formation was disorganized. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot happened because Ozawa wasn't ready.
And Ozawa wasn't ready because Dealey had sunk 4 destroyers in 4 days and convinced the Japanese that Tawi-Tawi was too dangerous. Admiral Lockwood understood this immediately. In his post-war memoir, he wrote that Harder's 5th Patrol was the most strategically important submarine operation of the Pacific War. 4 destroyers sunk meant 4 fewer escorts protecting Japanese carriers. But forcing the mobile fleet to depart early meant the entire Japanese battle plan collapsed before the first shot was fired. Between December 1941 and August 1944, American submarines sank 1,314 enemy ships, totaling 5.3 million tons. Japanese merchant vessels, cargo ships, tankers, troop transports, but only 29 warships. Most submarine captains avoided warships. Too dangerous, too well armed, too fast.
Dealey proved that submarines could hunt warships successfully. His down-the-throat tactic worked because it violated every assumption Japanese destroyer captains made about submarine behavior. Submarines weren't supposed to charge destroyers. They were supposed to run. When Harder charged, Japanese captains hesitated. That hesitation cost them 12 seconds. 12 seconds was enough time for torpedoes to close the range and strike. By war's end, American submarines using Dealey's tactics had sunk 214 Japanese warships, 4 aircraft carriers, 1 battleship, 9 cruisers, 38 destroyers. The rest were submarines, escorts, and patrol craft. Japan started the war with 63 destroyers. They built 49 more during the war. American submarines sank 38. Harder accounted for 4 of them in 4 days. On March 27, 1946, President Harry Truman presented Commander Samuel Dealey's Medal of Honor to his widow, Edwina Dealey, in a ceremony on the White House lawn.
The citation read in part, "This remarkable record of 5 vital Japanese destroyers sunk in 5 short-range torpedo attacks attests the valiant fighting spirit of Commander Dealey and his indomitable command." The Navy named a destroyer escort after him, USS Dealey, commissioned in 1954. She served until 1972. Harder received the Presidential Unit Citation for her first 5 war patrols, 6 battle stars for World War II service. Her motto, "Hit 'em harder," became legendary throughout the submarine force. But her real legacy was the tactical revolution she started. Before Harder's 5th patrol, submarine doctrine emphasized stealth and evasion. If a destroyer detected you, you ran. You went deep, rigged for silent running, and hoped the depth charges missed. Engaging destroyers in direct combat was considered suicide. The math didn't work. Destroyers were faster, better armed, and designed specifically to kill submarines. Dealey changed that math by understanding one critical fact about destroyer captains. They expected submarines to run. When a submarine charged instead, the destroyer captain had to make an instant decision with incomplete information. Turn left, turn right, maintain course, fire guns, all while torpedoes closed the range at 46 knots. Most captains chose wrong. By the time they realized their mistake, the torpedoes were already hitting. Between June and December 1944, 12 American submarines adopted Dealey's aggressive tactics. USS Tang sank 2 destroyers. USS Trigger sank 1. USS Barb sank 1 destroyer and damaged another. USS Flasher sank 3 escort vessels using down-the-throat attacks. The tactic's success rate was 63%. For every 5 attacks, submarines sank 3 destroyers and damaged 1 more. Only 1 in 5 attacks failed completely. Japanese destroyer captains adapted. By late 1944, they'd developed counter tactics. When a submarine charged, destroyers would turn away and circle back, forcing the submarine to expose her broadside to torpedo attacks from other destroyers in the formation. Or they'd slow down deliberately, letting the torpedoes pass ahead while closing for a ram. The tactic still worked, but the success rate dropped to 40%. American submarine losses increased. Between August and December 1944, 9 submarines were lost to destroyer attacks. Tang sank on October 24th, when her own torpedo circled back and hit her. Harder went down on August 24th. Darter ran aground on October 23rd while pursuing a destroyer. But even with higher losses, submarines were sinking more enemy ships than ever before. The aggressive tactics worked. Admiral Lockwood faced a difficult choice. Recall all submarines and return to defensive tactics, or accept higher losses in exchange for destroying Japan's convoy system completely. He chose aggression. Between January and August 1945, American submarines operating under aggressive patrol doctrines sank 437 Japanese merchant ships and 53 warships. By August, Japan had less than 25% of the merchant tonnage it started the war with. The home islands were starving. Factories were shut down for lack of raw materials. The Imperial Japanese Navy couldn't fuel its remaining ships. Dealey never saw any of this. He died 3 months after his greatest victory.
killed by the same type of escort ship he'd spent a year learning to destroy. But his tactics continued. Every submarine commander in the Pacific studied Harder's patrol reports. Every attack plan referenced the down-the-throat doctrine. Every torpedo solution included calculations for charging destroyers. On May 22, 2024, 80 years after she sank, an underwater exploration team led by Tim Taylor and the Lost 52 Project discovered Harder's wreck in the South China Sea. She sits upright on the seafloor at a depth of 3,750 feet, 12 miles west of Dassault Bay, where she made her last dive. Her pressure hull remains mostly intact, except for depth charge damage near the conning tower. The wreck is a protected war grave. No salvage operations are permitted. But finding Harder meant something more than locating a shipwreck. It meant bringing closure to families who'd waited 80 years for answers. And it meant honoring 79 men who changed naval warfare forever. Today, Harder's story lives on in unexpected ways. At the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, submarine tactics instructors still teach the down-the-throat attack as a case study in aggressive warfare. Not because modern submarines use the same tactic. Modern torpedoes are wire-guided and don't require close-range attacks, but because Dealey's approach demonstrates a fundamental principle. When your enemy expects you to run, charging often works better than hiding. The Naval History and Heritage Command maintains Harder's complete patrol reports in their archives. Every radio message, every torpedo firing solution, every depth charge attack. Researchers studying submarine warfare in the Pacific can trace exactly how Dealey developed his tactics across 6 war patrols. His reports show a commander who learned from every encounter, refined his approach constantly, and never stopped looking for ways to sink more enemy ships. Commander Dealey's grave is at Arlington National Cemetery in Section 59, grave 874. His headstone lists his rank, his dates of service, and one line: Medal of Honor, Destroyer Killer. Families of Harder's crew visit every year on August 24th, the anniversary of her sinking. They place flowers. They share stories about grandfathers and great-uncles who died at 22, or 25, or 37, fighting a war most of them never expected to survive. The 79 men aboard Harder came from 38 states. Farm boys from Iowa, factory workers from Michigan, college graduates from California. They volunteered for submarine duty knowing the casualty rates. 22% of submariners who served in World War II died. That's the highest percentage of any branch of the American military.
They knew the odds. They served anyway. Calvin Bull, the radio man who earned a Bronze Star for his role in sinking 5 destroyers, was 24 when he died. John Maurer, who survived Harder's sinking and later became an admiral, spent 50 years telling their story. He died in 2010 at age 90. The last survivor of Harder's crew, Paul Bryce, died in 2022 at age 98. With his death, no one who served aboard Harder remains alive to tell their story firsthand. That's why stories like this matter. These men left behind patrol reports and radio messages and Medal of Honor citations. But those documents can't convey what it felt like to charge a destroyer at flank speed, or hear depth charges exploding overhead, or watch your captain make decisions that meant life or death for everyone aboard. The official history tells us Harder sank 4 destroyers in 4 days. It doesn't tell us about the fear or the exhaustion or the absolute certainty that this patrol might be your last. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about submarine commanders who changed naval warfare with aggressive tactics. Real people, real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location.
Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Commander Samuel Dealey and the 79 men of USS Harder don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.